Okay, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar series, our spring webinar series. My name is Tiffany Grant Simmons. I am a doctoral candidate in cohort 10, almost ready to graduate. And I am your host this evening, along with our other graduate assistant, Mr. Jamal Johnson. He will be taking any questions that anyone has and, checking in the chat every now and again. So before we get started, I'm going to let Dr. Dana Mason talk about our lovely program.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad you could join us this evening. We have one heck of an awesome session ahead. But in the meantime, I just want to let you know about a few things that we have here at New Jersey City University and the Educational Technology Department. So if you can see my screen, we are a nationally recognized department, and our program has a few different areas of offerings of interest. Our Educational Technology Department is ranked first nationally for affordability and student-centered learning. And our MA program is ranked third nationally as an online technology program. So all of our programs are online and asynchronous. We'll talk briefly about what that means in a few minutes for those of you who may be unfamiliar. Our doctoral program is ranked ninth nationally for affordability and return on investment. So it's pretty wonderful opportunities that we offer. Um, our degree programs, we can begin with the MA, which is in educational technology. It's a 36 credit program fully online. So as you don't have to report onto campus. You don't have to come in for specific classes. We don't even have a situation where you have to sign on at a certain time for classes. The coursework is there. There are videos. There are and lectures that are created by your professors as well as readings. And you work through it at your pace as long as you're participating and making sure things are in on deadlines. Everything is completely asynchronous and virtual online. Our master's in school educational technology specialization in school library media is also a 36 credit course. This is something that prepares you to have the state certification for school library media. And the exciting parts about this is that it's one of the best jobs in the school, in my opinion. I'm a little biased, but I do enjoy when you have time for the library and technology and STEAM education. It's a great program. And we actually have one of the most competitive. We produce the most amount of school library media specialists in the state through our program. It's very popular. Our doctoral program is an Ed.D in Educational Technology Leadership. This is a 60 credit course, 3-year program, and it's completely online. The only time you'll be in person is 1 week every summer for our Summer Institute. And we do things together. It's a cohort-based program, so you move together with the same people as you work through the program. It is also online and asynchronous other than that 1 week in the summer. So if you're not looking to get another doctorate, or another master's, or going in that direction, but you want a little more for higher attainment for your district, we have certificate programs as well. So the Assistive Technology Specialist Certificate works with special ed and helping learn how to support students' needs with a variety of abilities through technology. And what's wonderful about this too is that you're going to learn how to meet people meet people where they are in terms of your students based on their exceptionalities or individual abilities, and find different ways of solving things that they might need to meet their IEPs and other types of specifications in the classroom so they can succeed their best. This is a 1-year fully online course as well. Everything is online and asynchronous. There are 5 courses total. That's a total of 15 credits, and 3 courses fully transferable to the master's program, which is great. The STEM certificate is also another certificate program, and these are also transferable to the MA program. These are 4 courses total, and it's 12 credits. This is also online and asynchronous, and it works with STEM and STEAM education, learning how to converge different subjects all at the same time, add technology and lasting, enduring understandings by layering means of 21st century learning to help those students really connect with things differently. Whether you're a technology teacher, an art teacher, a music teacher, like I was at one point, or you have early childhood, English, science, math, doesn't matter. These types of things that you're learning in this course is all designed based to be practiced through your particular domain and learning how to integrate the different domains as well. So should you have any questions, this is our website, our office phone number, and feel free to email us at edtech@njcu.edu. I'll put this information in the chat once we get started, so you guys will be able to refer to that along the way. But this will be great. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. I'm happy to answer questions along the way. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Tiffany.
Thank you, Dr. Mason. Again, thank you all for joining us. This evening, we have a fellow cohort member from cohort 10, Jeffrey Kontio. He is going to be presenting this evening. So without further ado, Jeff, take it away.
Thank you so much. Let me just jump into my slides. All right, let's just make sure you're seeing it right. Perfect. Okay, so one second. Two. One moment, mess up for a second. That's my relaunch. For some reason, my notes aren't showing up, and I need those today. Apologies for the delay.
Isn't that how it goes sometimes? And we tested before and it worked out perfectly.
Technology.
That's right. Tiffany can edit that out later for the recording.
There we go. So let's try this one time. Boop. 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 Make sure I have mine. Make sure you have yours. No. All right. Well, we will. We'll get there. Just take me a second. There we go. Fine. Sorry about the wait there. All right, let's run. So real quick, I just want to thank you all for joining today for this topic that's really important. One that I am very much so vested in, which is empowering classrooms, specifically your classrooms, using accessible digital content. My name is Jeffrey Kontio, as my friends here mentioned, and I'm coming to you with a wealth of experience in both education technology as well as in the accessibility realm. Currently, I'm a member of NJCU's Education Technology Leadership program. Much like Tiffany, I'm a doctoral candidate finishing up. We just wrapped up our dissertation phase, getting ready to defend and graduate hopefully at the end of this semester. I'm also the IT manager for the Department of Politics at Princeton University, where part of my role is to help my faculty and my staff to make good choices, good accessible choices for the digital content, be it for their website or their classroom or their course materials as well. Specifically the digital course material. And I'm an adjunct professor at Rutgers University, where I'm teaching a course in web accessibility. While much of my work is in higher education, I spent a great deal of time working with K-12 educators on integrating accessibility into their digital materials. I've also worked with some nonprofit organizations to develop training materials for paraprofessionals, specifically on inclusive education. My goal today is not to make y'all accessibility professionals, but instead to make accessibility more practical and approachable. We're going to focus on small, meaningful things we can do that you can apply to your lesson plans, to any slides you might use in your classroom, your digital assignments, really any digital materials you're creating for your students, without adding a huge workload to your already busy schedule. Even these minor changes can make a huge impact for our students and their learning and their engagement. So by the end of this, our goal really is to make it so that you're able to recognize some of the common accessibility barriers you might run into in your digital content. I'm also hoping that you'll be able to use some of the built-in accessibility tools that are to things like Microsoft and Google to improve your course materials, and talk about those best practices for making documents, slides, and multimedia more accessible, all without needing really any extra software
Go
or
ahead.
crazy technical expertise. Most importantly, you'll learn how to use, you'll hopefully leave with simple, actionable steps to make immediate improvements that will enhance inclusivity in your classrooms. Main takeaway here is you don't have to be an accessibility expert to create digital materials that support all of your learners. Often the biggest barriers aren't intentional. They just happen because the materials were designed with accessibility in mind at the beginning. Fortunately, these small strategic adjustments can help remove at least some of those barriers and make your content more usable for every student, not just those with disabilities. So a quick agenda just so we know what we're all covering today. First, we're going to discuss why accessibility matters. I'm sure we all know why, but I always like to cover the why and how it benefits all the students, not just those that may have a disability. Then we're going to walk through the most common barriers in digital content and how they create obstacles for learning. From there, we're going to explore some simple practical solutions that are easy to implement within your existing materials. We'll look at how we can use those built-in accessibility checkers I mentioned earlier in Microsoft and Google Docs and other platforms to check the improvements, check and improve your content, sorry. And finally, we're going to wrap up with some key takeaways and some time for questions and answers. Feel free though to drop any questions in there. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat as best I can. Or if my friend here, Mr. Johnson, can also chime in as well as things come in if need be. But there'll be time at the end for that as well. So why does accessibility matter? Well, accessibility education isn't just about compliance or supporting students with documented disabilities. So making sure all of our students have equal opportunity to learn. Think about the variety of students you have in your classroom. Some may have diagnosed disabilities, such as dyslexia, low vision, hearing impairments, while others might have undiagnosed challenges that affect their ability to engage with their digital content. Digest it is the word that I use in my class a lot. And then there are the situational barriers. Students that might be working with old or damaged devices, working in noisy environments with poor internet access, or students that are learning English as a second language. The good news is that making content accessible benefits everybody. For example, adding captions to videos isn't just helpful for those students that are deaf or hard of hearing, it also supports students in noisy classrooms or non-native English speakers, and students who prefer to read along as they listen, which I learned after getting my undergrad, that had all the things that I was watching or even reading could had those multimodal means, I would have been able to digest a lot of that content better and frankly been a better undergrad student. So, sorry, I lost my track. Here we go. So things like choosing clear fonts as well and good contrast can help students with visual impairments, reading difficulties, but can also help every student read your slides in the back of the classroom. Or if you're presenting things on the web, be able to read them easier on devices that might have lower contrast options. When we design with accessibility in mind, we're removing those barriers before they become obstacles. So many of the most common digital accessibility issues happen simply because accessibility wasn't considered during the content creation process. Most frequent challenges are hard to read text, which happens when fonts are too small, contrast is poor, or decorative fonts are used. Another issue is unstructured documents or slides, where content is just bolded rather than having an organized structure and proper use of headings and lists, making it difficult to students to follow and students with screen readers to navigate. Images and multimedia are another challenge when they lack alternative text or captions or transcripts, leaving students with disabilities with access to key information and students who value that extra modal tool to navigate and digest that information better. Finally, one of the biggest issues is not using the built-in accessibility checkers that a lot of us might not even know are even there, which can quickly identify and help fix those problems as you're going through the drafting process. Good news is these are issues that are easily fixable, and we're going to go through some practical solutions next. Let's start with the first one there, which is poor text readability. Oof, this slide is rough, and it's purposely made this way. This is an example of a slide that's impossible to read. The text is small, it's using decorative font, a fancy color that might be within your school's color scheme or color scheme when you start class, but you just can't read it. You know, for students with visual impairments or dyslexia, this can make things really difficult and can make reading unnecessarily difficult. Even students without disabilities can struggle to see this text clearly, even if you're sitting at the very front of the class. Now, this slide is purposely made this way, and it's kind of the extreme end of the spectrum. So here's the exact same content in a slide that's much more clear and easier to read. In this case, we used a better approach using clear sans serif fonts like Arial, using strong contrast like dark text on light backgrounds, or vice versa, if you're in a situation where you need to or prefer to use dark slides. And we are keeping our text at least 18 points for these slides. General rule of thumb, 12-point minimum for documents, and 12 point for documents, 18 point for slide decks. These small adjustments can instantly improve readability for your students. So to clarify before I move on, in case any of y'all like me were either never taught or weren't paying attention when this was covered, serif are those accents on your text. I like to call them feet on things like Times New Roman. Now, there's some research that says that some individuals with dyslexia find these serif fonts easier to read. With some positing that creates weight to those to the base of those letters, kind of anchoring them in place. And there's also some fonts that promote themselves as accessible to those with dyslexia. But honestly, there's still more peer-reviewed research to do in this area. So take those claims with some skepticism. So the next thing I want to talk about is document structure. So when digital materials are unstructured, it becomes really difficult for students with cognitive disabilities like ADHD, with cognitive disabilities, ADHD, or vision impairments to navigate. Common example of this is long blocks of unformatted text, which can be overwhelming. I always call it the giant wall of text slide that I always try to avoid whenever I'm doing any lectures or webinars. Better approach is to use the headings, lists, and proper spacings to create a logical reading order presented to the students. Screen readers also use the heading structure and lists in a way to navigate the slide or the content itself. If we just use bold and underline, you're not really using the built-in structure tools of the document creation or the slide creation applications. Again, simple structure. These techniques can really help to make the content available to students a lot more digestible. In my undergrad course, I always talk about menus. You go to restaurants, you go to menus, it is structured in a way so you can navigate it better. Screen readers and just individuals in general use these headers in the structure to navigate it better. Left-hand side is if I was handed the menu on the left-hand side, which is unstructured, I would not know how to navigate. I would not be able to find half the things in this menu. The right-hand side is structured. It uses images, it uses bolded text, it uses bullet points. Everything is navigatable. You know where things are, you can jump to things a lot easier. And again, those screen reader users, if you have any students that use screen readers, or depending on your age, the age group you're working with, they use this structure to navigate better. So how do we build this structure? Both Word and Google Docs both have ways to help us build our structure. It's always going to be available in your styles menu or your ribbon across the top. In Word, it's under the style section. You use headings, we use lists, we use all kinds of different options within that ribbon. And then in Google Docs, it's in the styles dropdown. Things to note about when you're creating your headings. You want to make sure that this is general rule of thumb. For perfect accessibility, we generally only use heading 1 once. That's going to be the title of your document. And then from that point forward, use heading 2 and beyond. If you're creating like scholarly works, it's a little bit different. So that rule of thumb for heading 1 only once is just something that I like to note if you're really wanting to meet like high level accessibility, but it's nowhere near required. Or it's nothing that I'm saying you have to do, I should say. When we're using lists, bullets and numbered lists are different. They are not interchangeable. Bulleted lists are for takeaway points. Numbered lists are steps 1, 2, and 3. This slide is a really good example. We have a Y as one bullet point. We have it in Microsoft Word for a bullet point. We have it in Google Docs for a bullet point with structured steps below each one of those bullet points, navigating you through the process. So this is the proper way to create structure, both bulleted and with the outline itself, because these are organized in headers, subheaders, and then subheaders. So many classroom resources contain images and multimedia, but they aren't properly labeled, and they create barriers for students who may rely on things like captions or other assistive tools to navigate the information. Generally speaking, if an image on a slide or image in a document, especially if you're sharing them digitally, is conveying important information, it needs something called alternative text or alt text. It's a short description that tells the person digesting the content what is in the image. Similarly with videos, they should always have captions, not just for students with hearing impairments, but also to benefit those reading along, whether it be English learning students or those that might be in noisy environments. Is helpful, or those that just benefit from spoken word and text reading at the same time. Fortunately, adding alt text and captions is pretty easy. Google Slides has a very straightforward process to doing it, as does PowerPoint slides and Word documents. I should note 98% of the things I mentioned for Microsoft is for all Microsoft products, be they PowerPoint or Microsoft Word. And for videos, if you're going to use something like YouTube or something along those lines, it can create auto-generated captions, which is great, but those auto captions are never going to be 100% perfect. There are small steps you can do to make a big difference for students who rely on them, though, and we'll get into those here in a moment. So adding alt text in both Google Slides and PowerPoint or Word documents is fairly simple. They're always going to be, if we're talking about Word documents, there's almost always going to be a picture format alt text button. There's also another tool we're going to get into here in a minute that kind of helps us through that process. And on this Google Slides version here, it's a little meta, but we're adding text to this slide to kind of show what that image is. Right click alt text, or you can go into the ribbon and see that. Both of those tools have those options. I should note when to mark things as decorative, things like lines on slides or documents, things you're using for dividing, things you're using to help build structure. If it's not telling a story, you don't have to alt text it, or it's not really necessary to alt text it. There are competing arguments, though. If you were talking about the business world, if you have a group of diverse people sitting here at a conference table having a conversation, if that's actually telling a story that you want to tell in your organization, you can be as descriptive as you want with alt text or less descriptive. One thing I also note for assignments where students are submitting documents that have images in them or images themselves, like photo-based projects or digital presentations, I'd recommend even teaching them how to use these things, helping build that digital literacy for those students as they kind of progress through your schools. Some notes about alt text. It's good to be concise but descriptive. There really is no character count maximum out there necessarily. But rather than saying something like a picture of a student, you could go as far as saying like a high school student using a tablet to complete an assignment, right? You're really telling the full story of what that image is doing there. A note about alt text: if they're in an area where the picture doesn't load properly, whether it's bad internet access or low bandwidth, what have you, it'll load that alternative text. So even students that are in that situation can still get the value of what's built into the image, what that image is telling, without seeing the image. Obviously, it's not a perfect situation, but they can still get the information you're trying to get across. So before I get into the YouTube portion, I do want to note this accessibility checker for Word and Google. In Microsoft products, Word, PowerPoint, and the likes, it's under the review tab. You select check accessibility, and it will constantly run on the side, just like spell check, just like grammar check. I generally have it open anytime I'm building a presentation, building a document, because it will tell me in real time, hey, should this be a header? Hey, don't forget your alt text. Hey, this contrast seems bad. It'll notify me in real time. Or if I'm in a rush, I can build a quick document and go over there and fix things I might miss. Either way is fine. Something to note about Google, however, for Google Docs, Google Slides, and the likes, there really is not a built-in checker. You can turn on options for screen reader support or Braille and the likes, but to test the actual accessibility of the product, you'd need to use an add-on like Grackle is one that's used a lot. Again, I'm not trying to promote one specific one. That's just one that comes up a lot. What these alternative checkers are doing is they're looking for missing headers, alt text, color contrast, and even though we're not going to get into it because they are a beast of a topic, but table structure. It'll also notify you if your table structure needs to be looked at as well. Talking about YouTube captions. So videos are a great teaching tool, but if they don't have alternative text and good captions and accurate captions, they're not going to. You're creating barriers often unintentionally. So captions are essential for students who are deaf or hard of hearing, but again, they can also help students who are English language learners, students with auditory processing challenges, or students who prefer to read along. Whenever I query anybody that I talk to in both my undergrad course and even when I talk about these topics elsewhere, the vast majority, if not every single hand goes up when I ask who has the closed captions on their YouTube videos when they're watching them. Most of the people that I talk to will raise their hand. And that's just because we find it easier often. It's becoming more culturally normal to have them on. And a lot of people are finding that they're processing that information better. Also, when you have videos where there might be drastic changes in volume, and you don't want to shift your volume too much, you can still capture what's being talked about on the screen. So YouTube, like I said, does provide auto-generated captions, but they're often inaccurate and sometimes inappropriate. It can grab wrong words and inappropriate words and toss them in there. Especially when it comes to like technical terms, proper names, or subject-specific vocabulary, especially when we're talking about the STEM environment, STEM education. So the good news here is always it's easy to edit these captions. All you really have to do is go into if you own the video, I should say, it's easy to edit these captions. They used to have, I believe back in the day, they used to have community caption editing, but they took that away for good reason, because we can't have nice things. So what they ended up doing now is you can only edit them if you own the video. It's really easy to do. You just go into, if you own the video, it's uploaded into your YouTube account. You go into the YouTube studio, select the content on the left-hand side, subtitles, and then the pencil, and it brings up essentially what you see in the screen caption here. And you can edit both the location as well as the content of the captions themselves. Nice thing too, if your browser has spell check in there, it will spell check your captions, which makes life a lot easier as well. So remember, something to also note, if you're using videos from external sources, it's a good idea to have those captions on and just kind of watch it through. If you have the time, you can adjust the speed and kind of watch it as well. A lot of the great educational videos out there have fully edited high quality captions. So, if you have good quality sources for those that you've used quite a bit that have been used, a lot in education, you're probably you're in a good step there. You might not have to check them all, but it's good practice. And honestly, sometimes those videos are fun to watch anyway. One thing that I do want to note as well is something that I normally do if I'm not presenting in a Zoom environment, and that is I always have captions on my Microsoft slide deck or my Google Slides if I'm presenting in person. This is just something that I just started doing a handful of years ago, and it's really been a huge boon to like the feedback that I've gotten from my presentations. Again, this feature benefits a wide range of students, not just those that are hard of hearing, but also non-native speakers, but again, those that read alongside. Google Slides, I have some varying levels of success, so your miles may vary with this, but you should be able to turn on closed captioning by going into present, selecting more options at top, and the captions on. Captions will always appear at the bottom of the screen. You don't have as much control as you would in PowerPoint environments, but you do have those on there. PowerPoint offers live captions by just going into the slide view. I could turn them on now, but it's not necessary because I don't want to overlap with if you have your closed captions on with Zoom, because it can kind of overlap and it looks weird. But like I said, I always have these on, and I get phenomenal feedback from all my students saying, I love that the captions are on. It makes this a lot easier to follow. I don't know if that's because I mumble or if it's because it's just easier for them to read along with it, but it is great. Some things to note, some things to keep in mind. Live captions, much like auto captions, because that's what they are not going to be 100% accurate. It's best to speak clearly and at a steady pace. And as you've been able to tell in the last 20 minutes or so, I do tend to vary my speed. Sometimes I mumble over my own mouth sometimes, and it is what it is. I should also note that Google Slides does not include punctuation when they caption. Generally, it's been fixed since the last time I've used it, but it generally doesn't include punctuation, so it might throw off some of the processing for that information. And again, captions can also help students take notes, so they can kind of jump back. If they miss what you say, they can kind of glance down and catch what you may have said and add extra and catch up to maybe what you were talking about. Even not in fully remote settings, live captions can be a real game changer for your students. One more thing, obviously for Google Slides, you need to have internet connection. You also need to have internet connection and either Windows 10 or later, and these versions listed here on PowerPoint for live captions to run. These captions go through Microsoft's cloud service, so it does need internet access to caption these in real time. And with that, I just have some last minute things to cover before we get to our questions, and it's just our 5 key takeaways. These are things you can easily implement to immediately make your digital content more accessible. First and foremost, choosing readable fonts and ensuring good contrast is an easy first step. Second, ensuring that you have structured documents and slides with proper headings and lists. Adding alternative text to make sure you have meaning to add meaning to your images, especially if, not just for those students that might be blind or low vision, but those of them that might have poor internet access. Make sure you have captions for your videos, provide transcripts for podcasts if at all possible. And as a reminder, using those built-in accessibility checkers in Word and PowerPoint. They're a great tool to catch small issues before students might encounter them. Now, automated checkers aren't perfect, but these ones do a great job for your digital content creation. And one thing that I don't cover in this presentation, but one that I do like to note, because it is a bit of a niche little thing, but when you're creating linked text, when you're sending links to students or providing links in digital documents, it's good practice to not just put the URL in there. It is better practice to have like linked text, right? You highlight your text, you add a link to it. When you do that, it is even better practice to avoid things like click here or read more. You're better off saying like read the assignment guidelines, watch the tutorial, telling them what that link is going to do. 2 reasons behind that. One, cognitively speaking, it's better, but also for if you do end up having a student that uses a screen reader, they bring up lists of links as well, and the screen reader will just read link to click here, link to read more, and it's not giving them any meaningful information. So much like your alternative text for your images should be meaningful, so should your link description texts. And that is all I have for the general content. So let's jump over to chat, or if anybody has any questions, we'll start that section.
Well, Jeff, before we continue, I just want to say thank you. This was very informative. I'm going to say that I've been teaching for a number of years, and a lot of these things that you mentioned, I have put into practice in a general sense. But this year I am in a fully inclusion classroom, and I've been continuing to put these things into practice. What I didn't know or didn't think of was the serif fonts being easier to read. That's something that I did not think about. And it's funny, I'm doing a presentation next week on things you can do in your inclusion classroom that'll be beneficial for your students. So I may borrow that one. The serif
Please do.
fonts are easier to read. So thank you for that one.
Of course.
So does anyone have any questions for my friend Jeff? Anyone? Oh, I know you all have some questions somewhere. Yes? No?
One thing I do want to do, just because I don't have a slide for it, is show off what that. Here, let me just show this. Share. Right. So this is the slide that I was running. And if we go into this review tab, here's the check accessibility, and here's it running along the side. Obviously, like, I worked to make sure these were all checked and good, but if I were to go into this one here and remove this alternative text and go back to this checker, it's going to immediately tell me that I need alternative text. So this is in real time, much like I said, your spell checker will go in and tell you, hey, you need alternative text for this. As soon as you save, it goes away. So it's a really cool tool. They just recently, at least I haven't tested on the Mac side yet. I have a colleague that says it works, but I want to verify before I say absolutely. But there's one thing in here called check reading order, where it takes a screenshot, like looks at your slide or your document, and it figures out if the reading order needs to be reviewed on that specific slide. So if we were to go into, where's my reading order? Actually, I fixed the reading order on all these slides, which is why it's not a problem, but reading order, okay. So if we were to move some of these things around and then go back into the checker, it's going to say, hey, can you check this reading order? This seems a little off. So you go in here and you can just move through these items here and see what order it's going to read them in, and literally just drag and drop them into the order that you want them to be in. I want the title there. I want the text there. I want the, oh, nope, I want the source media down here. I want that image and then the source information. So you literally just drag and drop your reading order. And as soon as you do that, it clears out that error. So little things that reading order really is really only going to be for somebody that's screen reader user. But it's one extra step, and frankly, I like to see all the successful checks when I move through these. So that's just me.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Hi, I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding that last technique that you did. When you say reading order, you're talking about the reading order inside of the slide, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So, for instance, like this slide here, that's got a couple of different things. If you look at that reading order, go back into review and go back into reading order. So again, this is a screen reader user is going to go through and look at these things in order and navigate to them in that certain order. Actually, this one's probably a better option, right? We have, the header, the text, the image, and a source material. Now, I can tell you now, when I first put the slide together, this was not in this order. These things were all over the place. And when I was going into this accessibility checker, I was like, hey, check the reading order of this slide. And I went to here, I was like, oh, yeah, no, that's not right. And like I said, you literally just hold, drag, and drop it into wherever you want it and let it go.
Okay, perfect.
Again, mainly for your screen reader users, but if you like to see all the happy, good checks, you're in good company. But but yeah, that's mainly for reading order within the slide. Otherwise, it does just follow the regular reading order of the size of the slide deck. I will also note, I don't cover it in this because it's even a larger topic, but any of the stuff you do in Microsoft products like Word and PowerPoint, when we go through and we export this, especially if you're exporting it using Acrobat, all of those built-in things follow it along, and that's your best way to make a darn near perfectly accessible PDF, which is in the accessibility realm nearly impossible. So anything you do for like the styling and all this accessibility stuff carries over if you're handing out PDFs to students, especially if you're working with older students that might be more might use a lot more assistive technologies like screen readers or things like that. That's where you can make sure your PDFs are at least much closer to being accessible to them as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.